This one is for Dylan Clancy. So Phantasm Oblivion tells the story of Reggie and Mike yet again on the run from the tall man, but this time we get a little bit of time travel to the past, checking out some small bits of the origins of the tall man, and finally revealing pieces of his ultimate plan for Mike. Alright guys, back at it again with the Phantasm reviews. If you're just now joining me, I've already reviewed the first 3 films in this franchise in collaboration with Lee from Drum Dums. Lee is watching all of these films for the very first time. I'm a lifelong fan of this franchise, especially the first 2 films, as you would know if you've seen those reviews. So after you're done watching my review, check out Lee's review. I'll post the link down below in the video description below for his channel. If you've not already subscribed, definitely subscribe. But for 2 different perspectives, lifelong fan and first time viewer, interesting little dichotomy we got going on here between me and Drum Dums. So definitely check that out. Now, Phantasm IV, Oblivion. A little bit of backstory with this film. Me and my dad randomly saw it one day, like in a Best Buy or a video store that existed back when video stores were a thing. Didn't even know this movie was out. Didn't even know it existed. We picked it up, brought it home, enjoyed the hell out of it. Could not wait for the eventual final chapter, which ended up being Phantasm Ravager. And this is actually the first time that I have rewatched this film since seeing Phantasm V Ravager. Was it 2 years ago now? So a little bit of a different perspective that I have knowing what this film ultimately leads to. And unfortunately, it actually made the film a little bit of a rougher watch. But I'll get into that. So starting right off with the positives for Phantasm Oblivion, Phantasm IV. And the main thing is that I really love how they incorporated the 90+ minutes of deleted scenes from the original Phantasm into this film. If you don't know, the original Phantasm was shot to be a 3+ hour film, which, as much as I love this franchise, as much as I love that film, is ridiculous. But they took a lot of those deleted scenes and wove them into the plot of this 4th film. Some as flashbacks, some they actually kind of manipulate into being plot points for this film. And as a fan of that original film, I really enjoy that. I still enjoy that. I think it's a very unique little story direction to take. Some people on the negative side will say that it's padding out the film and it's because of low budget they had to use that stuff, which is a small fair point, I guess, but I think they do it damn well. I think that they actually reinforce some of the themes of the original film, and it does reinforce another one of my positives, which is that this is the sequel in this franchise that feels the most like a true sequel to the original Phantasm. It has the most in common as far as pacing, as far as tone, as far as the approach. It feels the most like that original film. Once again, we still get some really fun, entertaining, and at times funny sequences involving the character of Reggie, played by the great Reggie Bannister. Once again, Reggie being a horny man and seeing some fine-ass blonde in the middle of absolutely nowhere leads to a really funny and entertaining scene. There's a scene where he has to take on like this zombie Cenobite-looking cop, which is a lot of fun. And I just love the character of Reggie. I feel like he's much stronger in this film of a character and much more entertaining than he was in the 3rd film, where it got a little bit too silly. He's not quite as much of a focus as he was in that 3rd film, but I feel like he's utilized better. And we have A. Michael Baldwin back playing Mike again. He played him in the original film, got passed over for Phantasm II, and returned in the 3rd film. Now, I think that the kid was actually really good in the 1st film, and I think he was actually pretty poor in Phantasm III as far as his acting quality. But on the positive side, since that is still the positives, he's a lot better in Phantasm IV. It feels like he took it a lot more seriously, or he was directed better, or he had a little bit more craft when he was acting. Again, not like Oscar-winning stuff, but he's a lot better than he was in the 3rd film. And if he had acted at this caliber in Phantasm III Lord of the Dead, I wouldn't have missed James LaGrosse so much. I actually think his performance in this feels much more like the Mike from the 1st film, and not so much of an afterthought and just kind of having the familiar actor for the sake of having the familiar actor. And I like what they do with his character here. He gets a little bit more of a development as far as the overall plot and the overall plan of the tall man, where he starts to have like some telekinetic abilities, and he starts to have more in common with the spheres and everything. So it's a really interesting direction they take his character, and it really kind of scratches your head and makes you wonder where they're ultimately leading this story to be. which unfortunately is Phantasm Ravager. And as always, Angus Scrimm is great as the Tall Man. And he had the added bonus in this film of getting to see him portray different sides of the character, because you get to see the intimidating, weird, creepy Tall Man, but when they start exploring his origins, you get to see him as Jebediah Morningside, and he's this sweet, inviting, charming old man. And not only does that show like the acting range of Angus Scrimm, who I feel like was always a very underrated actor, but that just shows how creepy and how weird of an origin story and of a transition that that character had to go through to become the Tall Man.
Oh, this won't hurt a bit. Well, maybe just a little bit.
And the final positive that I have for Phantasm Oblivion is that I enjoy the time travel aspect of it and the origin exploration of the Tall Man. They don't really go far enough into it, I will say, which I guess would make it more of a mixed element just for that one little side of it, but I do really like the fact that they go back, they try to explore where the Tall Man came from. They give you a mostly satisfying answer without over-explaining things, without going too far with it, and at the same time leave a little bit of mystery there, which I think is necessary for this character. I don't think that this character, the Tall Man, is ever a character that you should fully understand. I think that's part of what makes him creepy and intimidating, is all the question marks and all the mystery. So they do a good job at keeping that balance while exploring some of his origins. Now, with the negatives of Phantasm IV. The pacing of this movie is a little rough. It's a little bit slow. It feels more in line with the first film, which I appreciate, but after the second movie and the third movie being much more high octane, a little bit more, action filled and a little bit more exciting compared to that first film, it feels a strange direction to suddenly pump the brakes so much, separate your main characters, explore themes, have a lot of things going on in the desert, which again kind of goes back to budget restriction. It just feels like a much slower film than it probably should have been. While talking about the budget, I do think that the low budget of this film does hinder it a bit, because these have never been like big budget films. The second one definitely had the largest budget of the bunch, but this is a film where you really feel the restriction in budget. There's hardly any actors on screen except for the main characters. There's no set design really. It's just deserts, roads, a hotel, probably end of list unless I'm forgetting something. You really feel the restriction of Phantasm IV Oblivion. I feel like they explore a lot with that budget, story-wise, lore-wise. I feel like they utilize the flashbacks well, but you really do feel the restriction of the budget, and that's not really something you want to feel when you watch a movie. I really don't care for the decision that they made to separate our main cast. Part of the charm of these movies is the characters and that group dynamic. That's one of the reasons why Phantasm II is so many people's favorites, because it's a road movie with Mike and Reggie together the entire time taking on the Tall Man. This movie separates them. Reggie's driving in the desert, trying to find Mike. Mike's driving to the desert trying to find the Tall Man. And there's just not that group dynamic. There's not that charm. There's not that great character interaction that you really go to these movies for if you're a fan of them. It just feels like this huge missing chunk of the film. They're good actors and good characters for what these films demand, but part of that charm is seeing them together. You get to see them together for like maybe a couple of minutes, about 70 minutes into this film, then they immediately separate again, and then they're back together in the very final 5 minutes. And to me, that's a really big hindrance on a Phantasm film when you have these characters of Mike and Reggie and they're not together. But the biggest negative for me, which is actually a brand new negative upon rewatch for Phantasm Oblivion, is that all the things that it sets up, all the things that it gets ready for, all the teases that it gives you, all the places that it leaves you in by the conclusion of this film, leading to this ultimate conclusion and confrontation with the Tall Man, goes nowhere, because Phantasm V Ravager is garbage. I've yet to rewatch it. I highly doubt my feelings are going to change on it since my first review, but knowing where all this leads to with the story conclusion that they gave us in Phantasm Ravager, it makes 4 worse, because 4 is one of those movies that is a lot of lead up and a lot of build up to another film. It's one of those things I call a stepping stone movie. Before, I enjoyed it for what it was building up to, because there was so much that I was anticipating, so much that I was kind of building up in my head, so many things that I was speculating on But now that I know the answer, it just makes Phantasm IV feel like a lesser film because it's building up to a disappointment, which sucks because I used to like this movie way more than I like it now. Ultimately, guys, I think Phantasm IV is a good sequel. I think there's things here that if you are a really big fan of this franchise, you will appreciate, you will latch onto, you will enjoy, especially the flashbacks and utilization of the deleted scenes. Very cool aspect to it. But it's just ultimately a disappointment for me because I'm so hard on Phantasm Ravager and I'm so disappointed in that film and I'm such a detractor of that fucking fifth film that this one over time has just diminished its quality because of ultimately what it leads to, and that is a damn shame. If Phantasm V was awesome, Phantasm IV would be even better because of it, but because it's garbage, Phantasm IV is a lesser film because of it. So ultimately, guys, this is the chapter in the Phantasm franchise that I really would only recommend to fans of the first two films. If you are a fan of these films, if you are a fan of these characters, if you are happily going along with the ride of this franchise, possibly even through the third film, then Phantasm IV is a must-watch. Just know that it's a big tonal shift and it's a big budget shift from the first three films. But ultimately, it just leads to disappointment with that fifth film. So if you're a fan of the franchise, find this somewhere online and stream it. So what do you guys think of Phantasm IV Oblivion? Is this one of your favorites of the franchise? Are you like me and it just feels like a lesser film because of our distaste for the fifth film? Do you love the fifth film? Does that make Phantasm IV better for you? Do you feel like this pace of this film and the budget just restricts it to where you can't even enjoy it? Whatever your opinion is on Phantasm IV Oblivion, let me know down in the comments section below. And like I said in the intro of this video is also dedicated to the memory of Dylan Clancy. He's a guy that was very active in Killer Flicks. He was a very active moderator and admin of that group, very close friend of Lee from Drum Dums. We just did a Scream stream in his memory about 2 weeks ago. I didn't have as much interaction with him as Lee, but losing somebody so young, I think he was like 25, always a tragedy no matter what. So he was a huge Phantasm fan. That's the one thing that me and him really kind of bonded with, is our love for that first film especially. So Phantasm IV Oblivion, despite not being one of the better films in the franchise, this video and this review is dedicated to Dylan Clancy. So please like and share this video, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check down in the video description below, you'll find Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt for Cody Leach merchandise and other stuff. And you could check out my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. So check all that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, including the rest of the Phantasm review series, you can check that out by clicking right over here. Boy.